Let's start with our year-end review. So our overall impact in 2002. So we've been rescuing dogs actively for only 9 months. I know we hit our 1 year anniversary like back in August, but actively rescuing dogs only since the end of March 2002. And so in the 9 months we've rescued dogs, we've rescued 29 dogs and we've adopted out 25 of them. And next, we're going to tell you a bunch of stories about the dogs that well, not a bunch of stories, maybe a story about each dog that we've rescued. And this may be a little bit long, but I want you to hear these dog stories because to us, these dogs are probably just numbers, probably statistics, dogs that we rescued, but that and statistics that we put on our website and our brochures and flyers, but to every single one of these dogs we were everything to them because we saved their lives. So I want every single one of these dog stories to be heard, even if some of their stories are short, some are a little longer, but I really want you to hear every one of the stories. So with that said,
so Nala was the very first dog that we adopted out. She was a 2-year-old pit bull mix. Her previous owner was getting kicked out of their rental house without enough time to find another rental that would allow dogs, especially pits. So we found another adopter who adopted her on the spot. And because she was our first dog, we didn't have the rules that we have in place now. So we no longer do on-the-spot adoptions due to our experience with Storm, which we'll talk about later. So that was Nala. Then we have Hades, a 4-year-old pit bull mix, surrendered to a vet by his owner at the time to be put down because they can no longer afford their cost of his care. So Pack Life Rescue knew about this, but they didn't have an open foster who could take him in. And because it was urgent, they called us. And then our foster coordinator at the time, Marianne, opened up her house to foster him for a few weeks before finding him an adopter out of Melbray. When Hades was surrendered, he had some kind of skin allergies, and we found out that when he switched to raw food, his skin got a lot better. So that's what a diet can do for good old dogs.
All right, and then Storm is the next one that we adopted out. Storm is a 3-year-old husky. We rescued him from euthanasia at Stanislaus County Shelter. He had no behavioral issues, but the shelter was overcrowded, so they had to start euthanizing 10 to 15 dogs every single week, and they still are doing that. And you'll see this is the case with like most of the dogs that we rescued. So the adopter that I brought to meet with him at the shelter basically adopted him from us immediately. However, 3 weeks later, he was returned because family living situation. Her grandma was moving in. She decided to keep her 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy, but decided that she couldn't keep Storm. And I only had a few hours to find him a place to stay. Journey and I called a number of boarding facilities. Some of them were either too expensive or some of them would not even take him just because he's a rescue dog. But seeing how stressed out I was, my friend Jen actually stepped up to foster him for a few days. And a few days later, we did find him a foster, Rhea, who remains our foster until now. Storm is actually the reason that we require every adopter now to go through a 30-day transition or 30-day fostering period before finalizing the adoption. And on top of that, during that 30-day transition period, we always ask the foster to be ready to accept the dog back anytime within the 30-day period. Because that way, if the dog ever gets returned, then at least, they're going back to a familiar face, not to another new home. Because with Storm, we saw how stressful he was when he got returned 3 weeks into his adoption. He was pacing back and forth at Jen's house, waiting for, his adopter who returned him. And then when he was at Ray's place, again, he was so stressed out, he broke out of one wire crate and he broke out of one wooden crate because he was just that stressed out. And Storm is normally a very calm husky, which is, I know that's not typical of a husky, but he was very calm. And there is that 3-3-3 rule. If you haven't heard of that, it basically says that normally it takes a dog 3 days to decompress, 3 weeks to learn the new owner's routine and like kind of adjust his routine to the new owner's routine, and 3 months to feel at home. So by the time Storm was returned, 3 weeks, he had just been adjusting to the new routine and now he had to go, right? So it just really stressed him out a lot. All right, and then Venus.
Yeah, Venus was a 1.5-year-old husky. We rescued her from euthanasia from the Stanislaus shelter. There were no behavioral issues at all. She was one of the most friendly dogs we've ever met. And then we placed her with our foster in San Jose, Katie. The adopter who adopted Storm fell in love with her too and decided to adopt her as well. So now Venus is living her best life alongside Storm in Walnut Creek. Whereas Storm is calm, quiet, and reserved, Venus is one of the most friendly dogs we've ever met, and she's the typical husky high energy. Interesting fact, Venus's shelter name was Sunshine. Cute.
Yeah, now Sunshine and Storm are together in a new home. All right, I'm going to talk about Devon and Aries together because they are siblings. They're little mates. Devon and Aries, they're two of a litter of 6 pit bull mixed puppies. They were the products of a backyard breeder. And the backyard breeder used to throw them across the room when they were only 4 weeks old, because he claimed that that would toughen them up. Now, I think this is one of the roots of the bad perception of pit bulls, that pit bulls are aggressive. This is why, because when pit bulls get in the wrong hands, when bad people have pit bulls, they train them to be aggressive because they usually train them to be in dog fighting. That's why pit bulls get this bad reputation, that they're aggressive. And so their neighbors saw what they were doing, and she actually convinced them to give her all the 6 puppies and their mom, because the puppies were only 4 weeks old at the time, and you're not supposed to separate puppies from their mom and from each other until they're 8 weeks old. And so this neighbor, I called her the Good Samaritan, she took really good care of all 6 puppies until they were 11 weeks old. So when they were 11 weeks old, she developed her own health issues, personal issues, financial issues. And so that's when she contacted us, asking if we could take the puppies under our rescue. Now, we're a really small rescue, so I could only find 2 people, 2 fosters who wanted to foster or adopt puppies. And so we could only take 2. And Aries and Deva are the 2 that we took. Now, what happened to the rest of the litter? The remaining 4 puppies actually went to a rescue in Oregon. They're called Ark Pet Rescue. And so this is one of the examples where we worked with another rescue so that more dogs could be saved. You saw that earlier with Hades when we worked with Pack Life Rescue. And this time we worked with Ark Pet Rescue in Oregon. Deva, unfortunately, had a hole in her stomach. And our vet said that it's most likely from a blunt trauma, in her stomach. And her previous owner used to throw her across the room, right? So I'm sure there's blunt force trauma there. And so our vet told us that if we didn't fix this, by the time she's 8 months old, she would have a lot of health problems because of the hole in her stomach. And so we put her in surgery and so that our vet could close the hole in her stomach. And now she's living her best life at her adopted family who had fostered her for 30 days. And her new family recently told Tiffany that they did a DNA test on her and found out that she's part husky. Aries, on the other hand, did not have any health issues, fortunately, but he did have to go through a couple of foster homes before he found his 3rd home here in Fremont, who ended up adopting him after 30 days. So another happy story. So Niner. We have a whole saga on Niner. Niner, again, he was a dog at Stanislaus Shelter. He was scheduled to be euthanized in September 2021, okay, because of overcrowding. The shelter did label him dog reactive and said that he shouldn't be with any other dog in the house, he shouldn't be with any other animals, and shouldn't be with any small kids because he was also very jumpy. So when no one came to rescue him in September 2021, on the day he was supposed to be euthanized, the shelter's volunteers actually came together, chipped in, and pulled him out of the shelter and placed him at a boarding facility, because they thought that surely a rescue, somebody would come for him, to adopt him, to foster him, right? But nobody came for him. No rescue, no foster, no adopter. He was forgotten. When we first heard about him from one of the shelter volunteers was in late March 2022, when we had just started actively rescuing dogs. By that time, he had been living in, cord hard floor of the boarding facility for 6 months. And when we heard about him, we immediately started posting about him all over Facebook, all over social media, to try to find a foster for him, because, he's 10 years old. The boarding facility is hard-cold floor. It's not a loving home. That is not a way for a dog, especially a 10-year-old dog, to live, right? So we worked really hard to find him a foster, and we did 2 months later. So by the time we found him a foster, he had been living in that boarding facility for 8 months. The foster that we found him could only take him for 4 weeks. And so as soon as we found that foster, we worked on finding him another foster that could take him for longer. And again, like, I was posting all over Facebook, and we were getting so many hate comments on Facebook. We were, just because he was a pit bull. So people who were writing these comments were calling Niner a murderer, a danger to society. They were even mocking us, the rescue, calling us a killer for saving a pit bull. Even though this pit bull Niner had never been anybody, he had never attacked any other dog, nothing. He had no criminal record per se. But luckily, all the hate comments actually caught the attention of a professional dog trainer out in Phoenix, Arizona, who then offered to foster him for longer. But then we had to transport Niner from the Bay Area. He was in Newark at the time, all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, right? That's 700 miles. Now, it's already so hard to find transport volunteers locally. Like, it's hard to find transport volunteers to take a dog from one part of the Bay Area to another part of the Bay Area. And now we have to find transport volunteers to transport Niner 700 miles away, cross state. Luckily, after posting on social media, again, 5 volunteers stepped up to help transport Niner, but they couldn't do the whole trip, obviously, so they had to do it in 5 different legs of journey. And we had to stitch together the 5 legs of journey. We had to coordinate the pickup and drop-off locations for each leg and make sure that Niner was safe throughout the whole journey. And it was an overnight journey. And we called this the Operation Niner.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the
So yeah, so that was Operation Niner. These 5 volunteers were definitely angels. You know, they were volunteers. They really didn't do this for anything, just because they love Niner. And obviously Niner was a favorite at the shelter, and and also a favorite at the boarding facility. So yeah, so at the end of the day, the trainer in Arizona had him for 2 weeks. She actually also removed his mislabeling, because he was labeled dog reactive, dog aggressive, but he was actually not aggressive, and his reactivity was out of excitement. He just, he wants to play and play and play with other dogs, but he was under socialized, so he didn't know how to ask other dogs to play in like a proper way. But he actually does really well with children and with other dogs. And so after 2 weeks with this trainer, who's his foster, he actually got adopted by a friend of hers who just completely fell in love with him. And she also has a young kid. So that kind of debunked the myth that Niner could not live with a young kid. So that was Niner. Okay, Chase, I'm gonna let Journey talk about Chase.
Cool. Before I get to Chase, I mean, on Niner, I'll just say, like, this shows the danger of mislabeling a dog. Niner's a super sweet boy, and when he spent 2 weeks with the trainer was like, this is a wonderful dog. Like, why would you call him reactive? Why would you call him dangerous? And that labeling at the shelter, like, prevented him from seeing potential fosters and adopters for months and months. And so this was just a fantastic story, like the 5-legged journey from, Bay Area to Phoenix, where, we just happened to get the right 5 people who happened to like be able to take him all 5 legs, is just phenomenal. And he just looked like he was having a ball on his road trip in California all the way to Arizona. So I just thought that was just like a really, really wonderful story.
Thank you.
So Chase was the 3rd dog that we pulled from Stanislaus. He is a great dog, but he's a 2-year-old German Shepherd, and what that means is that he is extremely high energy and always wants to play. And so I think he needs, like, the best home for Chase is someone who can match that. Either they are themselves very active people, or they have active dogs who can keep Chase busy, and Chase can keep them busy. But when we rescued Chase, he just had the worst of luck. He exchanged hands 5 times in a matter of 6 weeks. So that's almost changing people 1 time per week. And it was a mixture of, fosters who weren't, who didn't have, like, who weren't very compatible with him, as well as just bad luck in general. Plus some great luck with just finding fosters who could bridge and take him in between so that he wouldn't have to be homeless. And so the first foster we had, had a medical issue, but also just didn't have very much experience handling German Shepherds at this level of energy. So he just ultimately wasn't a very good fit, and he gave up. He sort of relinquished Chase back to us. The next person that we found was great. He had a dog that was a German Shepherd as well, but had a travel schedule that made it hard for him to take care of Chase as a foster parent. And so after a couple of weeks, he wasn't really able to keep him either, given how frequently he left the house. And then luckily, before his neuter surgery, or around after his neuter surgery, we were able to find a bridge foster, so someone who could take him just for like a couple of days to a week, while we just desperately tried to find somebody else. Chase spent some time in Fremont, the clinic there, after his neuter surgery, but then he got an infection, which was tough as well. And then very fortunately, Rhea, who was another one of our fosters, took him in until he got very sick. And so Chase moved hands once again for nothing more than purely bad luck. Rhea's an amazing foster in that way. And so after that, he didn't have another home to go to, so he went into boarding. And so he went to boarding in Pleasanton, but because of a mishandling and his high energy, he wasn't able to stay. I guess we got notice from the Pleasanton facility that they weren't really able to like match his level of energy and give him the care that he needs. So they asked us to remove him from the boarding facility. And after all of that, we took him to a board and train, someone who could work with him for a few weeks. And that took a lot of donations and money. But within a couple of weeks of that training, the board and train, he found he garnered a lot of attention, and one person in particular was able to take him in. She loved him. She realized that he was able to jump over, like he had like over a 6 foot vertical. Like if you have a 6 foot fence, he can jump over it from 0 to over the fence. Like he doesn't need a running start. But she managed to work with that and was totally okay with that. And after 30 days, Chase was finally adopted. And so it took us a lot of resources, a lot of donations, and a lot of time. But you know, we're really happy that Chase, you know, who was such a good boy, was able to find a home with a that has a German Shepherd as well. It's a sister, or I guess like an adoptive sister who can match his energy, and they can play with each other and just really have that perfect family. And so really, really thankful for that as well.
Yeah, and this also, you know, through Chase's experience, we really learned that when a dog exchanges hands that much, it gets really stressful for the dog. Every single time Chase exchange hand, you can just see it.
We one of the shelters posted a video of Scarlett and Freya. I'll just say they were cowering inside in their kennel. They were sort of like lying on top of each other. They were shivering and scared, and it really sort of captured our attention. So we pulled them away, thinking that because they're small, they should be pretty easy to handle. But I would say some small dogs can be firecrackers as well, and so that ended up being what happened. Scarlett, unbeknownst to us, when we pulled Scarlett, we found out that she was completely infested with fleas, and she also had a lot of parasites in her intestines as well, both of which we treated immediately. And so we gave her flea baths, we gave her medication, and helped her just like get her physical health back on track. She was also really scared of everything, especially people and especially men. And so, you know, she basically never let me within a 10-foot pole's distance away from her, but she took to Lucy really, really quickly. Our guess is that in her previous life, she was probably had some like, you know, abuse from males in the household. She also, based on like us talking to other people, it looked like she had been bred a couple times. And that she was used for breeding, and maybe they discarded her after she wasn't able to like produce offspring. She took to Lucy pretty quickly, and I learned to just coexist with her while she had a really strong bond with Lucy. Not long after she was spayed, a volunteer from another local rescue put us in touch with Jill, who is a retired woman who's married. And lives locally, and just really wanted another dog, and she specifically wanted a senior Chihuahua Dachshund mix, which just happens to be exactly what Scarlett is. We did a meet and greet with them, and Jill was just so enamored with Scarlett, and we took her away. It took her, I don't know, like 30 minutes to decide that she wanted Scarlett, and so she went through the adoption trial, and now Scarlett is now living in her home, and has gotten really warmed up to her husband as well. And so very, very much a happy tale.
Oh, Nelly. Aaron is very familiar with Nelly. I don't know. Aaron, do you still have Nelly with you? Is Aaron still here?
Sorry. Yeah. Hi. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. I do. Let me turn my
Show us Nelly.
camera. Hold
Wow,
on.
let's talk about her.
Can you see her?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Perfect.
Oh my
Look at
gosh.
her.
Sleeping. Yeah, I'm babysitting until tomorrow because I knew before she got adopted that Luke had a wedding, and I was like, we'd love to have her. So, we played some fetch, went on a walk. She and Bash, my dog, were like, they're very like happy for 5 minutes to see each other, and then they're like hello, and then they just like cuddle on the ground. So yeah, I luckily get to see her today.
Love it. All right. Well, a little bit about her background. Aaron knows all of this, but she was a volunteer favorite at the Salinas shelter, but she was scheduled for euthanasia due to overcrowding. And again, no behavioral issues. Nelly is truly the sweetest dog I've ever met. She's also a fan favorite at Bark. She's super gentle, great with everyone, dogs, cats, literally anything you throw at her. She's amazing. She was in overall really good health, despite being a little older. So she's 7 years old right now. So Chase had really bad luck with fosters, but Nelly had really bad luck with adopters. So we went through a couple of adoptions, one of which she ended up developing pancreatitis and a UTI before she came back to us. And she just found her forever home with Luke, who Aaron connected us with. So Aaron doing the Lord's work. He's the second family to officially foster her, and then after a few weeks, he decided to adopt her. And obviously, she's living her best life right now, as you saw, just vibing on a couch. And she loves to go hiking with Luke on the weekends and cuddling with him on the couch. Anything else to add there, Erin?
Yeah, she lives like, I was gonna say, she lives the best life. Luke takes her, he sends photos, they like go hiking in the redwoods, and she even like, she has such good trust with him that he can take her off leash and she just like walks right next to him, and they go on these like long hikes, and like she said she just like passes by other dogs, and he has a niece and nephew that are little, and like she's been super sweet and gentle with them too. So like the whole family's been really excited. Like I'm good friends with his sister-in-law. So it's he's so happy, and the whole family is just like thinks it's an awesome fit. So she made it easy. And you guys, thank you.
Oh, Hopper. So Hopper is a survivor of the euthanasia list from the Contra Costa County shelter in Martinez, California, due to overcrowding. So Hopper also didn't have any behavioral issues. Our volunteer Sabby renamed him Hopper because how high his hops are. He basically can hop up to your waist, and he's quite a small dog. He's like a 15-pound Chihuahua. Although his foster, now adopter Jeff, has been teaching him not to jump, as he has spinal issues that can affect him when he becomes a senior dog years and years from now. And other than Nelly, he's the second adoption we had over Thanksgiving week.
Yay.
And then Rhea. Rhea's a 1-year-old female German Shepherd. She was saved from euthanasia from the Visalia shelter and rescued with her pit bull companion Zeus. She's super friendly and excited about everything, but it does come out with reactivity while on leash. But her current adopter is really working through that right now. Rhea, who had adopted Peanut Butter, fostered her for a couple of months before he found a really good adopter. Her adopter trained herself to manage Rhea's reactivity towards other dogs and squirrels. And so now she's putting her into professional training to train out some of her other reactivity. Yes.
Yes, she had an amazing adopter too. All right. Last that's
So I could talk about Freya and the puppies. So Freya is at the time was a 1-year-old Chihuahua mix. We rescued her from Stanislaus shelter. When our volunteer transporter got there, he learned for the very first time that Freya was pregnant. Well, the way that they put it was, oh, she might be pregnant. But I mean, if you looked at her, she looked like she was about to burst. And so she was obviously pregnant, and none of us were informed of that. They were like, I guess you can leave her here if you want. But like, I don't know. I don't think we're going to leave her there at that point. We decided to take her. And so we found somebody who would be able to take Freya and was willing to raise her and the puppies. But it didn't work out. And so at one point in the middle of September, the puppies were dropped off at our place. And so we had, for Freya, we had 6 puppies, and we had our own dog, and we had Scarlett. And so we had 9 dogs in the house. It was total mayhem for about a month, but really grateful to those who helped out, who helped buy us supplies, who helped come over and feed the dogs and help clean them. I remember our mornings, Lucy, our mornings were like, instead of getting up, having some coffee, eating breakfast, and then reading the news, we were cleaning up puppies and feeding them several times a day. It was definitely an undertaking. A whole month, we didn't have any experience, but we were, again, like, it took a village, right? Like we got a lot of really great advice from other people who knew how to raise the puppies. We got a lot of help from this group. And so at the end of the day, a month later, when they were around 8 weeks old and able to be separated from their mom, we posted them on Adopt-a-Pet and other places. And, within a few days, almost all of them found interest. And we're so lucky that all of the fosters or all the adopters who were interested in the dogs and that we gave them to were so great. People who were committed, who had experience with dogs, and were very, very responsible people and very, very caring. And so just like it was pretty chaotic for the month of September when we had literally 9 dogs in the house and a doggy pool that was empty and just filled with dogs. But we were able to find homes for all of them. And they hit their 16-week mark just today, and so almost all of them, I think 5 of the 6, are now adopted. There's one dog that is sick, and so she couldn't get spayed, and it's our policy not to adopt out a dog that isn't fixed. And so once she goes through her antibiotic regimen and gets better, she'll get spayed, and then we'll officially adopt her out to the person who wants her, to the person who's currently taking care of her. Additionally, with Freya, she had a lot of separation anxiety issues, but at the end of the day, we were able to find someone who was really, really patient with that, and just like absolutely fell in love with Freya from the moment she saw her. There was a period where during the meet and greet, like Freya wouldn't approach her for like 15 full minutes, and this potential foster just sat there and like waited for her. And eventually Freya picked up the confidence and approached her. And to us, it was like, for someone who would be that patient with a dog, it's truly like a good match. And so Freya is now officially adopted as well. She passed sort of the 30-day period, and every single time we ask her for an update, she just talks about how in love she is with Freya. And so what started as a very difficult situation with a lot of dogs, Freya and Scarlett were 2 dogs, but within a few weeks, 2 dogs turned into 8. This group helped us get them all out and into loving homes. And so probably to me, it was the highlight of the year. I think having 9 dogs in our house and hearing barking pretty frequently was definitely tough, I'll say. But it was super, super rewarding, especially when we got to see this outcome. And so I know some of you actually have one of the dogs. I know, Tiffany, you have Beans. Ara and Iris are with a couple of my relatives, but it really, really did take a village. And I'm just, especially as we head into the holiday season, I'm just like incredibly grateful that we were able to find homes for these puppies that were born from a dog that was about to get euthanized. So Freya was pregnant and on the euthanasia list, and so I don't know, like turning that into a situation where we can find 8 loving homes for all these dogs is just really wonderful.
Yeah, and to add to that, this case with Freya and the puppies is another case where our relationship with other rescues actually came through. We had, when the foster returned 6 puppies to us and Freya, like Journey said, we had no experience with newborn puppies. They were only 4 weeks old. They couldn't eat regular food. We had to learn how to make regular food, and we learned all of that from Resilient Dog Rescue, that is based in Sacramento. I'm in touch with the founder, and I literally just called her and be like, oh my gosh, like we have 6 4-week-old puppies, like I don't know what to do, I've never done this before, like have you done this before, can you walk me through? So she just patiently walked me through, here's how you set it up, here's what you need, here's the supplies you need, here's how you make the food, here's you make the milk. She was just patiently like walking me through everything. And we also had Pack Life Rescue like sent us donations in terms of puppy food, and we had one of our past adopters also sent out puppy food from I think from Petco. She's somehow connected with Petco. So yeah, so it was, this group was amazing. And this also just shows like our relationship with people outside of this group as well. And that's why collaboration, even within among rescues, are just so important. Charlie.
All right, so Charlie was a Pomeranian Husky, or Pomsky. He was living at the Contra Costa County shelter. He was 9 years old at the time and had been living in that shelter for 7 of those 9 years. At some point, the shelter started to become overcrowded and was forced to begin euthanizing dogs for no other reason than the fact that they couldn't fit the dogs that were already in there. And Charlie was number 1 on that list to be euthanized. We were very fortunate to find Laura and her husband Dana, who ended up fostering him, fell in love, and adopted him after 30 days. So super cool, great story, very, very fortunate, and just shows how difficult it is to, adopt out dogs certainly, but also with senior dogs too.
This is Eros. Oh,
Sorry.
He was rescued from euthanasia at the Stanislaus shelter. Again, no behavioral issues other than his desire to, hump every female dog he saw, especially white female huskies. He has a type. Ironically, we rescued him on the same day we rescued Venus, who is also a white female husky, and then transported from Modesto to Fremont together. Because of his humping fetish, we named him after the god of love, Eros. Fun fact, we chose the name Venus for Venus because she was the goddess of love.
And Eros because it's the god of love, and they were transported together and rescued together. Okay.
Cool. So this is Sharky. He is the second dog that we rescued from euthanasia at Stanislaus. So while he was at the shelters, for those of you who don't know, shelters have like two categories of kennels. They have kennels for dogs that are sort of normal behavior, they don't have that many issues, and then for dogs that are that have behavioral issues, they go into like a different set of kennels, and those are more difficult to adopt out. They get fewer walks per week, they get less staff exposure, things like that. So Sharky started off in the regular kennel, but because of a mishandling, he accidentally bit a staff member who was playing really rough with him. And so he was immediately transferred into the isolation kennels, where he had like no visibility to the adopters. And it also caused a bit of like kennel craziness, if you will, like just like a lot of need to decompress, a lot of hyperactivity, because you're just trapped in a kennel for 24 hours a day, like 7 days a week, for weeks on end. And so at some point he was just ignored, and eventually Alicia, who was someone who lived locally, stepped up and decided to foster him 2 hours before he was scheduled to be euthanized. And so a few months later, the mom reached out to us saying that she wanted to adopt Sharky. We find a way to surprise Alicia and her sister with the adoption of Sharky afterwards. I wanted to show you how that sort of turned out.
You guys ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Let's walk over here. Over here.
They're part of, aren't they? Are they part
Yeah,
of?
they're part of the foster. The foster.
Do they know to meet us here?
Yeah.
Okay.
They know to meet us. Come on, Sharky. Come on. Come on.
Oh.
Come on, Sharky.
Hey, boy. Hey, boy.
All right. Ready to meet your new family? Yeah. Yeah. Over here. Over here. They're over here. They're over here. They're over here. Over here. There you go. Congratulations.
What the you
We're
almost
gonna
called
adopt
it.
Yeah. Are we ready to adopt him?
I knew she was gonna do it when she kept saying, let me see, let me see the seed.
You're good. Surprise!
Oh, that's
I couldn't let him go. Oh, Sharky, what are you doing?
I couldn't let him do. Why would you make me pack all this stuff if you knew you were gonna do that? Don't worry about the wrong thing. I'll feel you on that stuff.
All right, next one. Yeah, better.
Peanut butter. Oh, love Peanut. He's the first small breed dog we rescued. He's 4 years old, neutered 10-pound Chihuahua mix, who was declining at the shelter because his companion had been adopted. Oh, sad. Our foster Jeff happened to be open at the time, and we were able to foster Peanut. When Jeff went out of town, Rhea had Peanut for one night, and him and his fiance Shani fell in love with him and then adopted him. Love Peanut. And now he has a sibling named Sesame.
Yes. If you join our small breed play dates, you will most likely see Peanut. Atlas. We finally got Atlas out of boarding. For those of you who are not familiar with Atlas, his pre-shelter life, he was abused and neglected all his life. He used to bark at, the mailman coming by. Like, it was just a normal dog barking because he's a dog. But his previous owner would hit him for barking. And he was also not walked that often or at all. They had a backyard, but the owner wouldn't let him roam around the backyard because she didn't want to have to pick up his poop and things like that. And so they kept him in the house, and he's a big dog. He's 75 pounds. So wasn't enough space for him. And so, but he was good with the next door neighbor's kids because he wasn't getting walked outside. He wasn't getting outside time. Sometimes he would walk himself and he would visit the next door neighbor. And she had two young kids, like a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And she told me that he was just really good with them. But then one day he was attacked by stray dogs that had frequented his neighborhood. And so in self-defense, he attacked back. And if you notice, like if you've met Atlas in person, or if you've seen his most recent picture, you can't really see it here, but he has a scar in his nose, and that was from being attacked by the stray dogs. But because he attacked back, his previous owner put him in the Stanislaus shelter, where he was then scheduled to be euthanized in mid-April 2002. We rescued him that day, literally 2 hours before he was to be euthanized, and we put him in foster care in Modesto. However, 4 weeks later, he was returned by the foster because he wasn't getting along with her cats. We're not really sure what the situation was, whether she created and rotated him or anything like that, but he was returned. And we had no other foster for him at the time, so we had to put him into a boarding facility in mid-May. And he was in the boarding facility for months, 6.5 months, before we finally found him a new foster, actually foster to adopter, depending on how it goes. So he went to his current foster last month in November. So far, they love him. They have another dog, and he's so far he's good with her. So fingers crossed.